I am sitting here with a very old, beloved friend of mine named Jason Davis. And Jay at present. Jay, tell us who you work for.
So I currently right now work for Patterson Healing Collective. It's an organization that's based in Patterson, New Jersey, as a hospital-based responder. So every time someone gets shot, stabbed, beat up really badly, we get called to the bedside to calm them down, get them to a baseline, and make sure that we can implement a structure of mediation. So that a war doesn't ensprue, like, because that's what usually happens. People get mad when their loved ones get shot or hurt, and they want to get revenge for it. So one of the things I do is make sure that I have like real tentacles in the community so that they respect me enough for my past, and I can tell them, like, let's think about something differently to do, because it's just gonna.
Now let's talk about your past. When I met you, you were an OG of a Bloods gang set in Harlem.
Right.
Are you still?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that didn't change. Only thing that changed was when I first met you. I believe that when I first met you, I think I was on the run.
You were, and we're going to get into all of that, because that's a very, very interesting dance with Eros, as we'll learn here soon.
Right.
So Jay, basically your job now, you came to this job because you had a background in violence, gang life, gang warfare, the streets.
Right.
And you decided to step away from that. And when you stepped away from that, what did you do?
I got introduced to mentorship, transformative mentoring. You know what I mean? I got hired a lot to do consulting work for mental health practitioners. So what they were saying was that we need help with being culturally competent. A lot of gang members like that going through what you've gone through have never been to a psych doctor or a therapist, in order to hash out some of these things that y'all going through, and it's just going to keep repeating itself. So we can utilize you to make that bridge and that connection. And the other part was that I started educating and learning more as an advocate for peace and stuff like that. So prime example, looking at violence as a public health crisis, from the public health lens. When you do that, you connect with somebody who is familiar with violence. So you use violence or somebody that is familiar with it to actually combat against it, almost like a disease. Right. So that was the model. When I learned that, I understood it. I understood why, if you look at violence as a public health crisis, you can easily eradicate it almost like a disease. And for me to actually have that kind of power or empowerment put in me like that to help against violence, something that everyone is afraid of, all across the country and the world. I want to learn more. I wanted to be part of it, and I got engaged a lot more.
When I met you, I got the feeling that you were in a transition from a very violent life to a not violent life, to a very productive life. And when we met, you came to me and pitched a book idea, which I bought and published, and sent you guys on the road to talk about gang life. Right. And what it was, what it did to your victims, what it did to you. Was there a moment you can put your finger on that you decided to step away from the blood?
Yeah, I think anybody who's so we always have a separation with people that are in the streets or live gang experience. The only people that don't want to stop are the ones that has never done enough. They haven't done enough to want to stop. I've done enough. I'm well decorated. I've been in violent situations all my repeated life. So I went out when I first got introduced to it, because I grew up in violence in my household. So I'm not a fan of violence. Like, I just have no problem doing it.
Right.
And once you start to realize that you're desensitized and then you're raising precious babies, it's like a contradiction. Like, it feels funny, and I didn't like that feeling.
So you think the babies were, in a way, the universe saying, you've got something bigger going on here now, buddy. Maybe you stop destroying and start building.
It was part of it. The part that was hard was that once I was going around doing speaking events and doing this mentorship program, I would literally find myself with a parent letting me in their house to speak to their teen. This OG, this blood, this accused killer, and all this other stuff. You let me sit on your couch and you accept me with warm arms because you think I can do something for you, and you think I've changed and everything is transformation. But we can watch the news, and the same heinous crime that I was a part of, I watch on the news, and I can look at my mother and say, like, oh my God, they need to be thrown in hell. And I look at it and I'm like, damn, I was the same person, like, but they forgive me, but they're not getting it just rubbed me the wrong way. So I realized that I had to do more to change that narrative, because I could have easily got caught up in that cycle where I was the one on the news and they could say that, throw away the key, he deserves to like rot in hell and stuff like that. That was me at one point.
Right.
So I didn't want to be like a hypocrite or a contradictor, like, I did. I wanted to make sure that people understood that the same person that you love, that you let into your household, that has transformed his life, and you got working with your child, that kid, that person that's on that TV screen that did this heinous crime can be the same person.
When did you feel, I don't want to be that guy?
I never want to be that guy. My circumstances placed me to be that person. So right now, I don't condone any violence whatsoever. But would I protect myself? I would in a heartbeat, And what happens is, because of my experiences, it might tend to be overboard because that's what I'm used to. It's almost like, years ago, if somebody stepped on my foot, I might, I might hurt them, Versus I look back and step back and watch how other people conduct themselves. They step on the front, it's like, hey, you stepped on my foot. And it's apology, it's talked out. And it's like, damn, why didn't I do that? Why did I make my life that much harder? What was I taught?
It's exhausting, isn't it?
Right, So it's kind of like, I never wanted to do that. It's just that was my conditioning.
I remember a scene in a bowling alley when we were celebrating a book publication.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody got angry over a piece of pizza.
A chicken.
Piece of chicken. And I thought all hell was we were going to have a brawl on the lanes of the bowling alley. That's a kind of an exhausting way to live your life.
Part of it is again, the experiences, the trauma, like me learning about trauma, being trauma informed and stuff like that. What happened was somebody took, and we had a party. The food was our food. Right. We had a large party. Somebody was walking by that was a part of another party and took a piece of chicken. Now, when he took a piece of chicken, ultimately, most of us took it as disrespect. Usually what happens is when somebody directly disrespects you, it's almost like they're doing it on purpose, and they're already prepared to almost like poke the bear to engage in whatever warfare. So that's how the mindset was thinking, like they would never do this on purpose. They must have something set up, Even though it happened not to play out that way, that's how our minds are always thinking, like, it's always traumatic. Almost like, hey, if you let that slide, as soon as we go outside, we end up getting shot at or robbed. It's almost like everything, it kind of like plays in our head like that because of our past experiences. So thank God that didn't work out that way. And thank God we start to recognize that overreacting, it shouldn't even be part of a reaction. The location is we talking about a rich history in the location where
the bowling alley,
like where it's located. So many murders have happened there. So many attempted murders have happened there. So many robberies, rape, all in
Well,
that.
you didn't tell me that before you invited me there.
Because you were protected by us.
Oh,
So we knew what it was.
Right.
So for anybody to do that in that area, it's kind of like, oh shit, we got a problem. It's almost like if we go to like the some part in the Middle East or Africa, and we know it's known for this criminal activity, and something happens there, it's almost like be alert.
During this time, when you were touring for your book, you were also on the run from the law.
Right.
For 5 years. So you would be on stage with governors to do your mentoring work and to do this sort of outreach you had begun to get. You were leaving the Bloods as an active member.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And had entered this world of activism, fundraising, education. And you were on stage shaking hands with all these important people and running around with magazine editors and celebrities. And the whole time you're on the run for attempted murder.
Right.
Now, that's a duality I can't really imagine in my life. How did you broker that inside of you? How did you... For me, you had to have some war going on inside of you.
I hated it. Like I hated that constant like phobia, fears, and stuff like that. But what I didn't know is I know human beings. You know, part of the reason why like I've always studied like human nature, the way people think. You know what I mean? I'm super into like mental health and like and how the brain works, because I knew that my safest space was for me to be in plain sight. I played off
which
of
is counterintuitive.
Yeah, I played into their biases. You know, they think that we're supposed to be like this or we're supposed to be like that. I sat right in front of them because they think that if he's on a run and he wouldn't do this, like So I got awards. I got invited. They gave me the keys to the park, and I wanted to do it. I fell in love with it. Like, and it was like, damn. So even though it was like a risk, I didn't mind taking that risk.
You've been interesting from the get-go. When you first stood up and started talking, you've got it. You have got the charisma, the ability to process the thoughts. You've got it. I don't know if you knew you had it. You would stand up and command, rooms for all these people. And by the time they were leaving, they wanted to change the world.
Right.
And Jay, that is not really within the grasp of most people.
You know how you always felt something that you're supposed to do something bigger, but never got the opportunity? So when we met you and these tours and events got put into place, and you took me out of my comfort zone, like going to restaurants, the first time I ever saw like a steak that's like over like $85, it's like, what the hell? Just even all of those different things, it showed us the world, a greater world than we knew. We started experiencing different things and more people, and that was amazing to me. Like, to see other people's genius, other people's art, other people's was amazing.
In this work I've been doing at Soulmaker Press, when I first got there, Nicole Daedone said, we're going to create a course to be used in prisons. And this is going to be a course where we're not going to focus on what job you have when you get out of prison, or, we're not going to focus on you finding Jesus so you can get paroled early. We're going to focus on you as a person and your soul and what you think and what you feel, and how you can bring yourself into a position to start receiving the energy, the goodness, the love in the world.
Right.
You were ready for that.
Yes.
Whether you knew it or not, you were ready for that.
That's my whole lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in writing this book, she started talking about ideas of the daemon. And the daemon is the darkness that lives in all of us. We're all wild animals, whether we want to, hi, I'm a wild animal.
Right.
So in all of this darkness inside of us, She believes there's a lot of energy, a lot of gifts, a lot we can learn. She believes that if you don't go inside there and become aware of it and make friends of it, it can overtake you and literally get you shot, get you divorced, get you in prison. Your darkness, you make a bad mistake.
Right.
When you were in prison, though, I know you loved the experience.
I did.
And I want to know why. Because you were in the darkness.
Yeah. Everything in my life I've been through, my experiences, has trumped that. Like, so that wasn't the most dangerous space, that I've ever been in. Like, that's one. Or mentally, I've been through worse. That was one. So I kind of was conditioned and prepared for that. I was battle tested. We call it battle tested before I went to prison. That's one. The other thing was I had got this enlightenment of wanting to do mentorship and help other people find their gifts and get connected to resources. So prison was like a breeding ground for it.
Big workshop.
Yeah, it was like, this is perfect, And then when I was in there, I've heard of it before, but I got to experience this light, this really genius that surrounds you in prison. These dudes are so brilliant and smart.
I know.
It's like you're around the greatest
It's crazy
people
scary
in the world. And it's so close that it's also dangerous at the same time. So what better place for me to be to get somebody to find themselves and then get them to a baseline so that they don't become dangerous, that they can be productive. Like, because when the violence takes over, it kind of overshadows your greatness.
To me, it seems like the daemon is very close in prison because the violence does break out.
Right.
It's like the only thing I have, it's like when you're watching animals and suddenly they start beefing and you have no idea why.
Yeah. But think about it. Captivity does that to animals.
Yeah.
So captivity for us would do the same thing. You can't move. You can't do certain things. So that closed-in space is actively moving closer and closer, and it's closing you in more and more.
How do you manage that inside of yourself and find space? I would think that there would always be a sense of being chased, being closed in.
You have to mentally be strong. So when they say prison's going to make you or break you, they're talking about mentally. They're not talking about anything else.
Is that the time you're left by yourself, or just the fact?
It's not. It's the worrying about things, worrying about what's happening in the real world. Which this is the real world. You're in prison. It's a world of its own, and almost anything you can have on the
what's
outside.
My wife doing out
Right.
there?
What's my? And you start getting these phone calls about but because you didn't understand that concept, you made a choice and you left somebody disappointed. You did that. That was your choice that did that. And then you have all these years to live with that while they're going through the world by themselves. And that's nobody else's fault but your own.
A man that I write to in prison, for him, it was how he had let down his children. That's all he ever wrote about.
Right.
And people don't think about that because they don't really give incarcerated people a soul.
Right.
They don't.
They dehumanize them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole, work that this group is doing and that Nicole has, spearheaded here is about trying to help them hear their soul.
Right.
The responses from prisoners
I know.
has been off the chain.
I know.
It makes me cry.
We talk a lot about the different dynamics, of the prisoners or inmates, but the innocent, it's a whole nother ball game. You know what I mean? Because that feeling of not wanting to be there, but they're there. I know what I did to be there, but for somebody that's innocent, and then I heard something recently that it's much harder for the innocent to get out than it is for the guilty.
And has anybody, they never will get numbers on people who are in jail
Right.
who didn't do it.
But it's and that's what I'm trying to say.
How many people have we executed who
I've
didn't do it?
always had this bias because I believed it that everybody in there was guilty. You know what I mean? So, but when I got in there and you start learning people, and so even for them to be that strong to overcome it and just like, hey, just accept it and still like live a regular natural life and they're innocent is just amazing to me. I would have to like regroup and you know what I mean, departmentalize things in my head in order to even get through it.
Denial is a horrible, horrible state to live in.
When I first met you, Beth, it's no way in hell you would have known what the inner works of gangs is.
Yeah.
The only way it worked that we became a bond and a friendship is you got to know me. I got to know you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's no way in hell I would have known about your lifestyle. What was I supposed to do? Prejudge? You know, she's racist. Like what is I supposed to do? It sounds stupid now. Like, you know what I mean? But I knew that we met each other at a medium ground. And that's why we always said, for all these years that we've been friends, people are not even used to it. And it's shame on them because they never get to experience this.
Yeah, that's true.
They never get to experience it. And that's the sad part.
The only time I really saw how people project that darkness is when I took 2 or 3 of your friends, Deshawn and 2 of the other people. Deshawn Morris was his co-author. The name of the book is The War of the Bloods in My Veins. It's a great book. And I took Deshawn to a department store to buy him a coat for his birthday.
I heard about it, yeah.
The guys were like little boys. They were talking, they were like little kids, and all the girls were looking at him, and all the girls liked him. So I was watching them, and then I started watching how people responded to them.
Mm-hmm.
Ran. Just wouldn't stand around him in the store. And then I watched the guys become aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they got angry.
Right.
And pretty soon we were in the middle of this sort of race darkness opera, you know, where everybody was working on a different fear. And I was kind of standing there paralyzed, like, are we going to get this coat and get out of here?
Right.
But I saw it very much in action.
Yeah.
And it was not only toward them, it was them toward, you know, all the white people who were looking at them funny.
Right. We are behind the 8 ball. We're limited. We should not be on the same level and damn straight shouldn't be surpassed you. So for us to not get the same opportunities and for people to see that genius and that creativity burst like it does and everybody in the world wants it, that's where that fear comes from. Because jealousy, ego, all of it starts to play in a factor, and that builds rage and violence.
Your attempted murder.
Mm-hmm.
He was a pedophile.
Come to find, yeah.
Is that why you attacked him?
No.
Why did you attack him?
He had robbed some 85-year-old white woman. He robbed her and he broke her hip in, you know, purse snatching. You know, see the face that you got right now? That's the face that I had, you know, and I really
pissed you off.
Yeah, and despised it. So
why did you take it upon yourself to do that?
1, because I could, and then 2, because I didn't realize that I possibly had some work to do mentally. I had to back out of it to realize that mentally something is not right. That
you didn't kill him, though.
No.
I'm just so fascinated by that moment because you were policing almost.
Correct. And that's why we don't see nothing wrong with it. We don't see anything. I even to this day, I feel bad sometimes, but regretful, no. You know what I mean? But, you know, and the thing is, like, you know, that was a horrible act. If it was my mother, if it was my aunt, I'd probably do it again. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the sad part with it. Like, you know what I mean? Now, I've learned how to police my community in a different type of manner. You know what I mean? Able to get somebody, sit them down, try to reason with them, you know, and tell them, like, listen, the punishment is going to be that I just won't deal with you. And whatever consequence the world gives you, you will receive.
So if you, prior to that time, had really been in touch with what was going on in here, you would have made a different choice.
Yes. Yeah. It wasn't no need to do it. That choice ruined opportunities upon opportunities with my world, my life.
Somehow you kept that book on a line. You kept it moving forward while still doing all your numbskull stuff you had been doing all the time. And then slowly it began to change. And I think what I saw in you guys is when you began to feel success in the real world, you moved towards it.
Right. That was the kind of like the plan. Like, meaning that if this pursues to plan out the way it's supposed to, like, we saw it. The next thing was us having a meeting, like, listen, we have to protect this with all of our might.
Let's talk about the women who kind of brought you out. Terry Williams.
Yeah.
Talk about Terry.
Deshaun was writing, and this PR woman, we didn't know it was a guru, you know what I mean, was in the PR world. So when we met at the Shark Bar. They closed down the restaurant, and we met her. She fell in love with us right there on the spot.
Talk about who she represented and what she did in the world. She was a big deal.
Yeah, she Emmett Smith, Chris Rock. Just to give you an example, she was the reason why Johnny Cochran and lawyers band together to make commercials.
She's got what's his name's purple suit from his stand-up. Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy.
She represented Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, but she definitely had a strong legacy, and everyone knew her. So it was good to be connected to her. Like, and then she was an advocate of mental health, you know. And she knew that I love, you know, that world of advocacy for mental health. So she definitely brought me and connected me to it as well, because she knew I was like kind of good at it. So the very first introduction to us doing speaking events was to another mentor of ours, Susan Taylor.
Who's Susan Taylor?
Susan Taylor is Miss Essence magazine. You know what I mean? Known for her beautiful braids.
Gorgeous women.
Yep. You know, solid.
Powerful women.
Yeah, really powerful, right? So, you know, again, didn't really know. We went to her penthouse, and she had like 200 or 250 women. You know, and the women were brown and black, you know, and they were all like CEOs and presidents and, like, you know, major, like, high-ranking people or people of power, like, you know, some strong social capital in that building. And she asked us to speak, and she introduced us as, I'm going to introduce you to 2 gang members, blood members, and they are, you know, my babies, and they're going to tell you a little bit part of their story. And, you know, everybody's looking around at each other like, this has never been a part of no shit like this. And we spoke and started talking about our life stories, which I learned is a type of narrative therapy. You know, so when we told our stories, we looked up. It was the first time we ever spoke. We looked up. Everybody was crying.
I'm sure.
Bawling, crying.
I'm sure.
And we was like, oh shit, like, you know what I mean? Those are like the beginning stages of Credible Messenger that we didn't know. That was where we went.
Credible Messenger.
Credible Messenger, yep. People that have a credible resume that people respect.
You're authentic.
Yeah.
You are really been through the experience, and people will trust your words. I want you to talk about women in your life, because I think they've been a huge force in your life.
Right.
Same with Deshaun.
Yeah. You're right.
And
Like,
women aren't scared of you, which
Nah, we definitely had a strong team of women that, like, that was different too. Like, everything we've done in our life through gangs has been warfare, where it's been men, heavy artillery, like everything has been brass. So when the women showed us another way of fighting,
they showed you the soft way of fighting.
Yeah, and that shit was more powerful than anything. The tongue and the sword. Yeah. The sword was the pen, and that moved mountains. The books you were sending me were it was Spanish books, and they were American books, but the books were like, you know, enlightenment, like, you know what I mean? I was handing those books out. all throughout the tier. You know what I mean? Because I remember I kept saying, send me more. All of a sudden, the warden deputy called me and was like, you know, what are you trying to be like little Malcolm X? And, you know, it started to become that kind of pushback.
They thought you were
Yeah,
like...
they didn't want that kind of power.
Yeah.
They didn't want that
organizing.
kind of power. Nope, whatsoever. And I got checked really quickly. And from there, that became my fight. Not the inmates pushing back in that regard. Like, you know what I mean? Like, no, we're going to stop bullying. We're going to stop this. I'm a mentor. Like, you know what I mean? If I catch somebody, you know, doing stuff to inmates that's not warranted, we're going to have a problem, you know? And then all of a sudden, I orchestrated a hunger strike, you know what I mean? And that was a problem. You know, they consider it demonstrating. And when you demonstrate power like that, they will treat you as such.
Yeah.
They will put you under the prison. You know what I mean? Or they would tell me stuff like, hey, you see how you got all these representatives and people that care about you in the support system? So we can't touch you, but your friend in this cell.
We'll torture him. Yeah, we'll do everything we can.
And they did it. And I was like, damn, like, you know, I couldn't protect, I couldn't fight. I didn't know I didn't know what to do. And at times it was chess. I had to like literally like stand down. They loved me. They really loved me because I stopped a lot of abuse on each other. And it's almost like, you know, when your oppressor abuses you, you tend to abuse other people because,
absolutely.
You know, and that's what it was like. It was almost like you're doing something that you detest. The best way to fight it is to not do it. Let me show you how to not do it.
I see that in women because we are an oppressed group, whether you want to believe it or not. And I see them attacking each other all the time.
Yeah.
Out of jealousy, out of fear. And it's like, wait a minute, you and I are not the ones that should be eating each other. You know, we should be we're on the same team, you know.
Yeah, absolutely right. We have a dysfunctional way of loving one another. You know what I mean? Not you and I. The streets. We love really, really dysfunctional.
Talk about that.
You know what I mean? And what happens is we think that love is shown by killing somebody, hurting somebody, it always has
so if I love you, I'm gonna kill that guy who's threatening you, and that proves my love.
Correct. You know, instead, if I love you, I'll take the time and energy to help you get the resources to get a stable home, to take care of, to help you with a need.
After so much loss in your life and so much loss for those guys on the street, how did you stand that pain? And every time I talked to you in those days, 2 or 3 people were dead. Every time, Jay.
I know.
And I don't know how you all kept walking upright with so much loss and pain in your life.
Yeah.
I know that early on you guys were working with a therapist who worked with people who had survived wars.
9/11, Katrina, you know.
What did you learn from him?
That they weren't just the present traumas, they were deeply rooted traumas that attracted us to the recent traumas. I learned that, you know, just being really, really trauma informed about myself and other people around me helps you avoid a lot of like carnage and mass destruction mentally, you know. So, for instance, you know, I've experienced like, you know me, sexual abuse early in my life. I didn't know that will connect me to poor relationships or toxic relationships or accepting certain things because of what happened to me. Because I didn't get healing from it, you end up being attracted to that particular type of trauma where that it's a high likelihood that if someone is molested or raped early on, that they might be molested and raped again. Same thing with robbery, and that's how we treat, you know, violence as
just keeps rolling.
Yep, as a disease, because once you get stuck with it, for something in your head, it alters the way that you think and the way that you move in your actions, and you end up being attracted to it.
It has an addiction component, is almost like what you're saying.
Yep. That can easily be combated if you use the proper techniques of mental health practitioners, like literally you get right up on it because we've experienced all levels of this. So I can go into a hospital bed right after someone's been shot and it's fresh, right on their head, the anger of their loved ones, of their family, of their friends, of them themselves, and calm them down and explain to them logically, you can't make that mistake. You can't make that phone call to get somebody hurt because what's going to happen to your mother, your girlfriend, or your daughter while they're pushing your pushing your wheelchair around with you from place to place.
When you start that process of arresting this sort of cycle of violence in a victim, how do you have to stay on them? How do you sense
Like follow-ups and stuff?
they're turning, that they're going to be okay?
Experience, like, you know what I mean? So body language, you know, them talking, you know what I mean? Certain response, you can tell that, you know, they are gonna be all right. And then follow-up is always important. You have to do a follow-up. Without follow-up, it's almost senseless. So I can calm somebody down, get them down to a baseline, but if I don't check up on them the next day, later on that night, you know, these things are important, you know?
Consistent.
Yeah, consistency is always important.
Yeah.
You know, food is important. You know what I mean? Breaking bread with somebody, like, you know, all these things are important. Sitting down and talking to somebody on eye level, all of this stuff is vital. Like, you know what I mean? I've learned it over the years, these different techniques versus me standing as power over you as an authority figure. Your body goes into the defense, your brain already clicks on, and half of the stuff I'm explaining to you that's going to help you, you don't hear.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, teaching other practitioners when they're doing this work on how to do it properly is all of that is key. All of it. I know that education is always key. Knowledge is always the best way to combat against any of this stuff, especially this type of stuff, because it's a puzzle. And the thing is, the knowledge that you need to know and have are simple things. One, when violence occurs, especially murders, it doesn't cross racial lines. It rarely crosses racial lines. Rarely. So all these misconceptions, do away with them because you're pointing in the wrong direction. The other thing is most people who are murdered or killed is by someone that they know.
They know, yeah. You're one of the few people I think I feel more than like it's not your words so much as I feel the fact you're telling me the truth. You know, I just don't have weird feelings about anything you do.
Right.
Because you're, you know, it's like, I remember a man, Dan, and we were at the land in California, and he had asked you about the crime.
Right.
And he said, "Did you do it?" And you said, "Hell yeah, I did it."
Right.
And he loved that. You're not a liar.
Right.
And it just feels so great. So even though your childhood was difficult, and I know some of the difficulties and some I don't, there were things being put inside of you that were absolutely remarkable.
Right.
We talked about your programming, which is basically your programming was, you know, you were raised to be a street guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you didn't particularly feel you had many choices about that, did you?
No, I did. I had the choice to not become a street person. The thing is, my view of the world was that if you weren't a street person, you were not respected. So I didn't want that.
You wanted respect.
Yes. My father was a mean person, you know what I mean, and kind of a bad man at times, but he also was my hero. So it's a lot of contradicting, like, you know what I mean, and confusion with that. So I would see people fear him. I would see him do like the most heinous things to people, like, you know, talk to a person's wife and the husband bow down, like, you know what I mean? I would see him, you know, play with guns and hold guns in the street and walk in public with these things, and nobody would say anything to him. They all feared him. And even though I didn't like his actions, I did not want to be the other people. So that's why.
That was the message you took.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to pick the other person. Like, I didn't want my wife to be, you know, for me to be punked like that, for me to bow down and walk with my head down. But I didn't want that. And the thing is, because of that, in my life experiences in the street, I end up having this love for the streets. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and the action, you know, that comes with it, the adrenaline and stuff like that, you know what I mean? So I had to reinvent that. So when I do see bullies and stuff like that, I take on the challenge of disarming them and doing it in a peaceful fashion, like, you know what I mean, and doing it non-violent. Like, that's a hell of a challenge, and I take it on. I take that role on because it fulfills that urge of
to take care of it,
right, of violence and stuff like that. You know, because once you do it for a while, you get a taste for it. We know it can be used in any organization, any group of people, any individual person. So, you know how we say, like, you know, some of these, you know, law enforcement are, you know, doing too much. They can literally learn how to do the same thing that I'm doing, because there's no way in hell that they're more volatile than gangs. We do it on a daily. You know, they might have shot somebody, you know, once in their whole career. You know what I mean? We do that target. So we understand it better. You know, the best, you know, and I think that's difficult for them. The person that they need to learn from is us, because we can teach you how to manage it, you know, and not kill your whole family and blow your brains out, because that's what they're doing. We live this, like, you know, so take the advice, learn from it, so that these kind of things don't happen, that you don't lose your job by putting your knees on somebody because you're spaced out and blanked out, you know, so that you don't, you know, trip on somebody and all of a sudden, you know, it becomes a mass community beating from law enforcement. You know what I mean? That you pull out your bully clubs and you damn near beat somebody to death.
Yeah, they almost this
right.
mob mentality
right.
rises in them.
You lost your damn mind for 2.2
You know,
seconds.
you were the only person who said to me about the George Floyd incident, that cop was not there.
Yeah.
He was not in his body. No. He was responding to some story he had in his head.
Yeah, I've seen it before.
Yeah, and he killed a man.
Yeah. I've done it before. Like, you know what I mean? I've spaced out and had somebody tap me out. I've seen it in prison a lot. I've seen somebody choking somebody, beating this guy to death, but he's screaming out his father's name in the process of it. So somebody tapped him out of it to wake him up out of it. The partner, when I seen him put his knees on, you can see he's gone. Somebody's supposed to tap him and wake him up out of it. You know what I mean? That's the right thing to do, because once your brain cracks, it cracks. You can't, he's
in the darkness. You can't get out.
You know, and I saw it. I saw it and I understood it. You know what I mean? Because one, I've experienced it before myself. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I know what that is.
Yeah.
That didn't look malicious. I know what malicious look like. You know what I mean? And that just wasn't it.
Yeah.
People
he was
like
tripping.
No,
he was in another scene, in another universe.
You know, and that's the problem. Like, you know, people's biases change the narrative, and then we don't get anything done. How can these human beings, these men, black men, be a part of a system, law enforcement, for all of these years, and then all of a sudden, body cams out like that, and they lose their goddamn mind to do that at that particular time? Call that now as a mental health breakdown, but guess what? They caught in it, and they're gonna have to pay for it, because somebody didn't catch it.
And they gotta go. You know that. Unfortunately, with a lot of those guys, they don't know they're going to click into a loop until they do it, you know.
Because we keep calling it something different instead of addressing it. It's going to keep repeating and happening. And just to put this out there, like, you know what I mean? I don't hate police. I know they have a job to do, but they're not trained to deal with mental health whatsoever.
No, they're not.
You know, they're just not trained to do it. And they know it. They openly, like, say it, like, you know, but they just not, you know, they're not trained to do it. So don't put them in that predicament. I've seen how cops operate, how they talk, how their mannerism and their actions. They are a super gang.
Yeah.
You know, and they operate like gangs. If I deem them a gang, who is their opposition? Other gang members. You know what I mean? So if you're right, if I'm your opposition, I know how we do well or on welfare. I know. You know, we wear hats of our logos, of paraphernalia, like, you know, of death. Every time we wear it, we represent our tattoos on our face, on our body. It's symbolizing death. Not death of our own, but that we will kill. Like, the reason why I have it is because we killed you and your loved ones of your gang. That's what it represents. And we're bold with it. We're brazen with it. We don't mind going to jail, losing our life for it. And it's kind of like, when you think about it in that regard, it is scary.
How many, like, of your original group is still alive?
Most of them are gone. But when I made the transition, since I made the transition, I think only one died. You know, if not any. I'm trying to think. I'm mistaken. None died. Only one went to jail.
Interesting. So
Yep.
when all the banging stopped,
2009, I made the call.
and you closed down the whole set.
Yeah. No more breeding, no more criminal taking part in criminal activity, nothing. You either had to have it enroll into school or job.
And how did they take that?
When it was the large numbers, I had to go to war. Unfortunately,
You had to go to war to get peace.
I had to go to war. They did not like it whatsoever. Who the fuck you think you are?
Were you fighting with the set, with the guys in the set?
Yeah, with the set. Yeah. Some that didn't want the alter and change. So what I gave them my option. You can go and be a part of without any type of repercussion. Give you a month and a half. Go. If you stay, you can't do X, Y, and Z.
Could they go join another violent group? Yeah.
I gave them full reign. The thing I didn't want was for the ones that got the message and were transitioning their lives, because some had already. What people don't understand is that it's only maybe like 15%, and that's a high number, maybe 10% of gang membership partake in violent acts.
Oh.
Most of them don't. Most of them do not.
What is that about? How do you decide?
That's not.
Who's got the talent?
No. So that's not something that we control. By design, that is the way it is. So I guess the same way it says, like, only 1% of this country commits violent acts. Not the whole. If the whole did, it'd be like Babylon in here, like, you know what I mean? But that's, for some reason, that's always been a dynamic. I don't really know the research on why that is, but with gangs, it's definitely it's the same. So what happens is you got this small 15%, 10% causing fucking hell. They cause problems. So most are innocent being killed within the gangs. So it's kind of like, I don't want that. I don't want to pay for bail anymore. I don't want to pay for lawyers. I don't want to do none of that shit no more. I don't want to send you. We supposed to be taking care of your family and stuff like that. We're paying for funerals and all kinds of stuff like that. So what I decided to do was no more. And no more meant, if you get caught doing a criminal act, part of your survival in prison is living off the gang. Now, if I don't assist and help you, you're on your own. That's the punishment for it. So I can love you enough to avoid you and walk away from you, but you're not going to bring everybody down. You're not. You know, it's almost like you know it's about to happen. Hey, let's go to the party. Let's go to a club. You know, it's 4 of us. And that one person is like, hey, I want to come too. But this is the one that always fights. This is the one that always packs a weapon. This is the one that always wants to talk to somebody's husband or somebody's wife and cause a fight, and we're not going to have a good time. Do you still invite them in the car? Your ass ain't coming. Yeah, you're not coming. You got to stay home, and we'll tell you about the fun
we had.
Yeah, but you're not coming. And we have to like start holding each other accountable, especially in gangs. And other gang members, like law enforcement, has to take our lead in our role model, hold people accountable for their actions. That's why they have a problem, because no one's held accountable. We hold ours accountable. You do some wrong shit, you get your ass beat, dismantled, kicked out. We do it. We do it, so you can't frown upon our leadership in the way that we conduct ourselves. It's y'all. Y'all can see something of the most heinous things, something that is not even part of your moral compass, and still let it slide.
Yeah.
Like groping, rapes, like, you know, shit that we despise, despicable. Why would you even want to be a part of that?
They let it go.
And you let it go, and it taints your resume.
They not only let it go, they befriend people who do it.
Yep, and that's a problem.
I never thought you'd live very long.
I remember you saying that.
And 9 months ago, you had a grandson.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing to me. He is life. He is an extension of you.
Mm-hmm.
So far into the future.
Right.
And I want you to talk about that feeling of having your grandson, seeing your grandson.
Right.
He will be in this world 50 years after you leave it.
Hmm.
How does that feel to you?
It feels like, it's a weird feeling. It feels like I'm having my first child again. You know what I mean? It feels like, you know, every mistake that I've done with my own kids, I want to pour into him and make sure that those mistakes are not even relevant or even done. You know, I want him to be better than not just me, but his parents. You know what I mean? Like he is the future. Like, you know what I mean? Just like I want for my kids, I want it to be stepping stones. Like, I mean, I want them to be, you know, decent, good, righteous, great people, so that the stepping stone for his generation becomes that much simpler and easier. So one thing that people need to know about me is that my ideology is deeply rooted in a core balance. I take a lot of my instructions, you know, from not just the Bible, but like how Jesus moved. I mean, I say that a lot. He was the greatest example of, he worked with gangsters. He worked with gangsters.
And he was a bit of a gangster.
Yeah, he had to be. You know what I mean? He didn't use weapons. He used his tongue and his brain. He can disarm anybody with his words. Like literally, that I'm mimicking.
And they were terrified of him.
And I mimic it to a core, because that is the ideology of what a gangster should be. He's not being violent, how harmful. You get what I'm saying?
He held that power.
Right.
That unbelievable emanation of love.
Right.
And he made such sense. It was actually madness.
Yeah.
You know?
So that's kind of how I think. So with my son, my grandchild, I love him with all my heart, you know what I mean? But I also love everybody. So his peers, you know, the people that came forward, the one that's gonna come at them, I kind of love them like equally, or I practice to love him equally, because that is gonna give him a fair chance. Me not just pouring all into him, but pouring into his whole generation and the generation before that is going to give him a chance at life. You know, so that him not being selfish, you know.
Takes a village.
Right. You know, and I know that's needed, because that's what I needed. I didn't need somebody to pour directly into me. I needed a village. So no matter where I went to and I bumped into, they would help me.
I just read a sentence that Nicole Daedone wrote that I loved. I need you to love me so I can love others. And that's what you need to give him.
Yeah.